The Allen Line Company thanks all the hard-working drivers who are moving goods across the country. We can't do it without you.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Redding.
An OOIDA member has once again claimed a Highway Angel Award for stopping to help a fellow driver who crashed in his truck. We speak with Tim Olden, who says he just did what truckers do when a driver is in need. Some recent cargo thefts in Philadelphia have been making the headlines. Tyson Fisher of Landline magazine says, aside from the obvious causes, we should look at whether a lack of truck parking played a role. We'll have that and more in the parking zone. And finally, it's not been a great week for the spot market, according to DAT. Load-to-truck ratios decreased for all three equipment types. We speak with them to find out what's to come and to see what markets will be busy this week for the upcoming Super Bowl and Valentine's Day. But first, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. Our top story today. A new joint resolution signed by members of the House and Senate seeks to overturn a Biden administration rule aimed at reducing emissions. The measure, which came by way of the Federal Highway Administration last year, mandates that state DOTs and metropolitan planning organizations set declining emissions targets. The new Congressional Review Act joint resolution introduced Wednesday takes aim at the rule. In a statement, Senator Kevin Cramer of North Dakota said the one-size-fits-all approach is silly and unserious, as his home state of North Dakota and New York, for example, have very different transportation systems, needs, and capabilities, yet are treated the same under the rule. The resolution has the backing of several trucking groups, including the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association, which signed on to a letter of support, stating a belief that the Federal Highway Administration lacks the statutory authority to create a greenhouse gas performance measure. A busy year for the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration's Advisory Committee on Underride Protections is set to begin. The group will hold its third overall meeting and first of 2024 tomorrow, February 8th. The focus, rear underride crashes, which most commonly occur when a car slides underneath a tractor-trailer. There are already requirements in place for rear underride guards, but NHTSA is considering a mandate of side underride guards. Last year, NHTSA issued an advance notice of proposed rulemaking on that very topic. The agency received about 2,000 comments and has since moved the rulemaking to the analyzing comment stage. NHTSA is not expected to take any action until October of this year, but presumably wants to hear the advisory committee's recommendations before deciding how to proceed. In addition to tomorrow's meeting, there are two others already on the docket. Those are scheduled for March 13th and April 24th. A House bill that would prohibit FMCSA from imposing a speed limiter mandate on the trucking industry has picked up another co-sponsor. Representative Byron Donalds is the 33rd member of the House to sign on to the DRIVE Act. The bill was introduced last year by Representative Josh Brecheen of Oklahoma as FMCSA speed limiter ambitions were taking shape. Those plans have come into focus even more since. The agency plans to publish a supplemental notice of proposed rulemaking this coming May. If that holds true, the agency is likely to reveal a proposed top speed at that time. Pushback to the idea of a speed limiter mandate has been consistent from a variety of angles. Legislatively, the House bill is joined by a companion bill in the Senate, where 9 co-sponsors have so far signed on. In the public arena, an advance notice of supplemental proposed rulemaking last year yielded more than 15,000 comments, with the majority coming from truck drivers who are opposed to a mandate. And groups like the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association have been vocal in their opposition as well, encouraging members to speak up and push back. To join that fight, check out fightingfortruckers.com. A coalition consisting of Borg Warner, Cummins, Eaton, and Ford wants the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency to move forward on a final rule that will set stringent emission standards on trucks. The heavy-duty leadership group is urging the EPA to finalize its greenhouse gas emission standards for heavy-duty vehicles Phase 3 rule by March 31st. The EPA's proposed truck emission standards would require more stringent standards for model year 2027 vocational vehicles and day cab tractors. Those standards would be increasingly more stringent from model year 2028 through 2032. The rule would require a quarter of new sleeper cab tractors sold in the U.S. to be zero direct emission by model year 2032. The heavy-duty leadership group's support for the EPA's truck emission standards deviates from some of the industry's biggest names in manufacturing. Most notably, the Truck and Engine Manufacturers Association has been a vocal critic of the proposed emission standards. In testimony submitted last year, the association emphasized the lack of needed infrastructure as being the biggest hurdle in zero-emission truck adoption. In a change from the January outlook, the Energy Information Administration now expects an increase in oil prices in early 2024. The EIA says ongoing attacks on commercial ships traveling the Red Sea are driving uncertainty surrounding global oil shipments. Longer routes put upward pressure on freight rates because of fuel costs and fewer available ships. In its February outlook, EIA said the Brent crude oil price increased in January to $80 per barrel. That price is expected to continue to rise until at least the second quarter of 2024. Based upon the forecasted increase to global inventories, EIA believes prices should begin to see downward pressure at that point. The fuel portion of EIA's outlook remained about the same as the previous month. In the first quarter of 2024, diesel is forecast to average $3.94 a gallon and fall to $3.92 in the second quarter. A crackdown on crime is coming in Northern California. Governor Gavin Newsom announcing plans this week to deploy more than 100 California Highway Patrol troopers to the Oakland and East Bay areas in response to a spike in crime. That includes cargo theft, along with retail crime, violent crime, and auto thefts. Governor Newsom's office says the CHP will deploy license plate reader technology to identify and recover stolen vehicles, along with specialized CHP units such as canine officers and air support. All told, the campaign will represent a nearly 900% increase in CHP personnel. Crime rates decreased in many parts of California last year, officials say, but that's not the case in the Oakland area, where violent crime rose 21%, robbery cases were up 38%, and vehicle theft increased 45%. The leader of Rhode Island's biggest city says commercial trucks are tearing up city roads. This all started back in December when the Washington Bridge in Providence had to be shut down due to a critical failure. Detours were put in place, but Providence Mayor Brett Smiley says tractor trailers are using city streets to get through the construction zone. Streets, he says, are not designed for heavy trucks. The mayor is asking truckers not to drive through the city unless they're making deliveries. Smiley is also asking the state and feds to step in and ban trucks from Providence city streets, a move he doesn't have the authority to make. As for the Washington Bridge, officials say it could be another year or even two before repairs are finished and it opens back up. Goodyear is adding to its off-the-road tire lineup. The company says the GP3E line, offered in several sizing options, is a general-purpose tire featuring compounds engineered to support longer wear and advanced abrasion resistance. A news release announcing the tire line said the new tread design balances traction and tread wear for a variety of applications. And finally, there's still time to get your free tickets to the Mid-America Trucking Show. The free registration period runs through February 21st. After that, the charge to register for MATS is $10. More than 58,000 people are expected to attend the show at the Kentucky Expo Center in Louisville next month, along with nearly 900 exhibitors. Plus, there are a host of other events like the PKY Truck Beauty Championship, truck and tractor pulls, and more, like the Friday night concert featuring the Steel Woods. OOIDA will be there as well with a booth and will take part in the Pro Talks education series at MATS. The association will zero in on two topics, creating a business plan and the dangers of predatory factoring. For more information about MATS, which runs for 3 days starting March 21st, visit truckingshow.com. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. Next, Ashley Blackford speaks with highway angel Tim Olden about his efforts to help a fellow trucker who was in a wreck. Scott Thompson talks with Landline Magazine's Tyson Fisher for an update on truck parking. And Ashley gets the details on the state of the spot market from Robert Rouse of DAT. We'll be back in just a moment with more news and information. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Capital Reman, your leader in remanufactured diesel engines and components, is celebrating its 10th anniversary. Let us help you avoid costly downtime and repairs by visiting capitalreman.com today. Use code OOIDA10 to receive your member benefits.
Stock up on Howe's Diesel Treat, the nation's most trusted anti-gel. And to be safe from the harshest winter conditions, make sure you have Howe's Diesel Lifeline on hand, the fastest-acting gelling rescue product. Available nationwide, Howe's products are designed to keep you rolling through the toughest conditions. Visit howesproducts.com.
Attention professional drivers, are you behind on your tax filings? You owe money? Integrity Tax Relief Group frees drivers from IRS trouble. You watch the road, we'll keep an eye on the IRS. Call now. 855-976-4291.
Buckling up keeps everyone safe on the roads. Learn more at www.sharetheroadsafely.gov. Paid for by FMCSA.
Landline now, welcome back. An OOIDA member has once again been given the Truckload Carriers Association Highway Angel Award. Tim Olden stopped to help a fellow truck driver who fell asleep at the wheel and crashed his truck. Tim joins me now. Congratulations. When did you find out you were going to receive this award?
Well, as soon as when I called my dispatcher, because this is the second one.
This is the second one. Okay.
Back in July, I was in Colorado and dealt with a car that had crossed the median and crashed into a pickup truck hauling a camper that went across the median on the other side, and they were in the median.
Wow. So this is the second time you've been given the Highway Angel Award. Wow. Can you talk me through what happened this time? It happened in December. Talk to me about what happened that night.
Well, it was actually December 22nd. It was around 3 to 4 in the morning, right there in Crossville, Tennessee, mile marker 320. I had passed the driver earlier going uphill. He was going slow, and I was cruising the posted speed limit, about 72. And he blew by me about 75 or better, and he went off of the Crossville exit there at 320 at the same speed he passed me and lost control and rolled it. He admitted he fell asleep at the wheel, and I stopped because it is part of a truck driver's job to stop and secure an accident scene if they can, especially if they see it. And I called 911, went up to the truck, looked down in the passenger window at him. He had a deer in the headlight look in his eyes. I asked him if he was all right. He's like, yes. I was like, okay, put your shoe on and kick your windshield out. I made him kick his windshield out, got him out, I had him sit down on the side of the road, and the Crossville city cops, their response time was immaculate. With Crossville, the rescue squad, and the ambulance, they were there within 5 minutes of me hanging up from the 911 operator.
What goes through your head? I mean, you've been driving for many years. What goes through your head when you do witness an accident like this?
Really, nothing. Really. It's to make sure the driver's all right and that they got no animals, no other passengers in the vehicle. If I were to crash, I would want somebody to stop and check on me. Yeah. Because years ago, even if we were broke down on the side of the road, we stopped to see if the driver needed any help. Because a lot of times back then, we used to carry alternators, starters. We had tools. We were not just drivers, we were also mechanics.
Now, I read in a press release that you told the driver, you talked to the driver about the 3 yawn rule. Can you explain that to me?
Okay. It's a rule I've made for myself, more or less. If I yawn 3 times in a row, I find a spot and I go lay down. Because it means, to me, well, I'm a little bit tired or I'm fatigued or I'm agitated and I need to get off the road and stretch out and relax for a little bit. And sometimes you might fall asleep for 45, 50 minutes and wake up and be like, oh, wow, I feel a lot better. And then you can continue on. It's a rule I use to know when I need to look for a spot to take a break.
How hard can it be, though, when you're out on the road and, you need to get from point A to point B and obviously, every mile is money. to recognize those signs, and how important is it to pay attention to those signs?
Well, years ago, I had an accident. But my accident wasn't because I was tired. Mine was due to a brake fade. And I had to make a choice to shoot a guardrail and go into a ravine and into the trees versus hitting a woman that was in front of me with her 2 kids bouncing around in the back of a Jeep that weren't secured. It was either hit them and severely injure the kids, go through the guardrail into the ravine, or squeeze between her and a state highway truck. I chose to squeeze between her and the state highway truck with my 4-ways on and laying on the horn, and I sent the state highwayman to the hospital over that, over my decision. We have a lot of decisions. We have to determine when we need to stop and when we not. And that's when I started I used to run paper logs. So we used to push real hard back then. The E-log helps control that to where shippers can't push us, brokers can't push us, companies can't push us. So I've watched this industry change. It used to be real fun to being real bureaucratical, and you just have to adapt to it. And also, I've learned to start knowing my own body time because I used to push real hard. If you push too hard, something is coming to take everything you've worked for away. And all it takes is one incident.
How was the driver when you talked to him? How was he doing?
He seemed fine. He was a little shaken and confused of what happened with him and all, but like I said, he admitted he fell asleep to me. He admitted that he fell asleep to the local cops when they got there. And also, in a sense, he threw his livelihood away by admitting that. But he did the right thing by admitting what happened, what he had done.
Do you think fatigue on the road is a big problem right now? Or has it always been a problem?
Yes, fatigue can be a big problem, but where the fatigue winds up in at is when you're sitting at a shipper and you have to sit there. You're there early in the morning for a pickup or basically a delivery. And you don't get in till 10, 11 o'clock in the afternoon. And then you got to go pick up and then go make another delivery, and they want it by the next morning by 4 o'clock. Well, the mileage ain't bad, but a lot of the receivers, shippers, and brokers, when they set appointments, they're sitting behind a desk. They don't understand what it's like to drive through Little Rock, Arkansas, Memphis, Birmingham, Atlanta. They forget about we have to deal with the traffic plus road work. You never know when you have leadways. You have no leadways for breakdowns because anything could happen. And if you break down and you're on the side of the road, a lot of companies think you ought to be sleeping. I'd like for them to try to sleep alongside the highway with trucks and cars flying by. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm more nervous that somebody's going to hit me, so I don't sleep. So that throws you into fatigue.
How long have you been a truck driver?
I've been driving the truck. I started in 1989 as a carny. And it was to get away from where I was at. It was my escape.
Wow.
And I've been doing it ever since. I've had a few little vacations. I've done construction work, but I always have went back to driving because some people say, I have a poor temperament, a short fuse. I'm the type of person, you give me my job and leave me alone. And this is where I can do my job and be left alone.
Now, you're an OOIDA member. When did you join OOIDA? Do you remember?
I joined OOIDA in 08 or 09 originally. Then I let it lapse, and then I rejoined again because I got rid of my truck, and because the laws were changing. Well, I went into business with a buddy of mine, and he wanted to complain I made unnecessary repairs. So I told him, you need a truck to drive? Here you go. I walked away from $40,000. Well, I went $40,000 in the hole over him, but I walked away from the truck. Gave him the truck back and said, the hell with it. And I went back being a company driver. And now I'm back I've been an owner-operator again for the last 10 years, 1 month, 9 years as an owner-operator, but I've worked for Decker for 10 years, 1 month and 26 days.
Wow. Why is it important for you to be a member of OOIDA?
Well, it keeps me up on the rules, regulations. So if companies try to say, well, you can still do this. Well, no. You better go get your FMCSR manual and read it. Because things change. And laws don't change year to year. They change month to month.
Yeah. Coming back to the award, what does it mean to you to get recognized once again for this heroic act?
Well, I'm honored that the company that I'm leased to feels that I deserve it. To me, it is actually really part of my job. Because if you think back in the early 90s, 80s, and the 70s, all accidents were communicated through truck drivers because we had nothing of a cell phone. And all. We were dealing with pocket full of dimes and pocket full of quarters and calling cards and all. So the State Highway Patrol used to monitor CB radio. Your fire and rescue squad had a base station in there, and they listened to it for accident calls.
Interesting.
And all. So really, it's always been part of a truck driver's life.
Yep.
To me, it's part of my job. If I can stop, I'll stop. If I can't, I can't. If the roads are solid sheets of ice, I'm not going to try to stop real quick.
Yeah.
But I will make that phone call to get people out there. And all. If you're on real icy roads, snowy roads, it's not a good idea to stop on the side of the road for that. Unless the vehicle happens to be on fire, then you kind of really got to stop. But if you're hauling oversized loads, hazmat loads, that's a nonstop for those guys.
Yeah.
And all, because now you're making the scene even worse.
Lastly, what advice would you have for drivers, ones that are starting out young and you know, some of the more senior drivers out there? What advice would you have for them when it comes to being on the road, feeling that tiredness that can come over you? What advice do you have for them?
Well, if you start feeling tired, you start yawning, or it used to be the old rule was turn the radio up, roll the window down. Okay, if you feel like you got to get into doing that, find a spot and stop. Don't drive above your means. Most drivers, when we started years ago, your trainer, to actually get in the industry, you actually were a lumper for a driver. The driver picked you if he wanted to train you to drive and all. Most of the time, the biggest thing is you unloaded freight, you did the backing maneuvers until the person that was training you felt that he could trust you to drive and go lay down and go take a nap. And the thing of it is, ask questions of senior drivers when you see them and listen to what they tell you. Don't figure that, oh, well, they don't know what the hell they're talking about type ordeal attitude. And there's a lot of that.
That was Tim Olden, a truck driver that was recently named as a Highway Angel by the Truckload Carriers Association. TCA started the Highway Angel program in August of 1997. Since then, nearly 1,400 professional truck drivers have been recognized as Highway Angels for exemplary kindness, courtesy, and courage displayed while on the job. To nominate a driver, you can visit highwayangel.org and click the Nominate Today button. For Landline Now, I'm Ashley Blackford. Stay tuned for more after this.
Penske owns and operates some of the best-maintained vehicles on the planet. Our used trucks come with a 5-year maintenance report and pre-sale inspection. So if you're in the market for a top-quality pre-owned truck, look no further. Search our inventory today at PenskeUsedTrucks.com.
Control your toll costs and eliminate tolling headaches with Prepass Tolls. Prepass Tolls means toll volume discounts. Just one invoice for all tolls and fewer violations. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
Ready to make more money? Use a better load board. For a limited time, get 50% off Truckstop Load Board Pro. Just go to truckstop.com/go and enter promo code READY2023 when you purchase Load Board Pro.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
A blank space on many maps with the distance between parking spaces seemingly as great as infinity. It is the boundary that separates safety and security from the dangers of the road, the space between electronic signs and a place in which to rest. It is not a dimension of the imagination, but instead the reality faced by truck drivers every single day. It is a place we call the parking zone. Here are your guides for this journey into parking news good and bad, Scott Thompson and Tyson Fisher.
Thanks, Mark. Tyson, I'd say welcome to the parking zone, but this is where you live.
This is
You live in the parking zone.
I do.
We got a lot to get to today. Let's start big picture here, Tyson, by looking at this big chunk of money that was just awarded to a number of truck parking projects nationwide. Some good news here.
Yeah, so the U.S. DOT allotted about $300 million specifically the truck parking projects. This was part of a larger, nearly $5 billion infrastructure investment that it made. So, yeah, real quick, 4 major projects here. The bulk of it is $180 million to the Florida DOT to build over 900 truck parking spaces along Interstate 4. So that's a big one.
That's an area that really needs it, too.
Absolutely does. And then there's about another $92 million for the Missouri DOT to improve I-70, which will include new truck parking facilities and truck parking information systems. $8 million for the Wisconsin DOT to reconstruct a rest area along Interstate 90 in Sparta. That will expand the number of spots from 16 to 70, which is exactly what we want to see these investments do, expand existing truck parking spaces there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then there's another $12 million to the Washington State DOT to deploy a regional truck parking information system that's going to go along the I-5 corridor in Washington, Oregon, and California. So just real quick, I think it's worth mentioning that in just the last few years, the U.S. DOT has made pretty historical investments in truck parking. They really have. Like last September, it was more than $80 million was given for truck parking. In September 22, there was nearly $40 million allocated to truck parking projects. So, the U.S. DOT, I want to give them credit for actually, putting forth the money towards truck parking. That being said, I do have some criticism.
You've got some qualms.
I do.
Let's air your grievances, Tyson.
And the only thing that I complain about is that they are spending millions of dollars on these truck parking information systems.
Right.
And those are those signs along the highway that lets truckers know how many parking spaces are available at the upcoming rest areas. Obviously, the solution to the truck parking crisis is more truck parking spaces. That's
novel concept.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It's really the only solution. So I think the goal here is to pretty much render those park information systems are useless, That would be the stated goal here. And so, pouring more money into it, it's not really helping much of anything. That being said, it's a good time to mention the Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act, $755 million dedicated to more truck parking spaces. Very bipartisan, 24 Republicans, 22 Democrats are currently backing the bill. So, if your lawmaker's not there, fightingfortruckers.com, fill out a quick form, go straight to your lawmakers, get them on board.
Yeah, this is obviously a problem we've talked about before that's going to take a village. It's going to be a team effort.
Yeah.
We're going to have to attack this on all sides, essentially, whether that be from the U.S. DOT, legislation, states, local communities. But as we've talked about before, I do feel like we're heading in the right direction. Progress is slow, but we're getting there. So credit where credit's due, as you mentioned there, to the U.S. DOT. But as you point out, maybe don't focus as much on these signs and maybe focus a little more on actually putting the parking places in place there. Let's move on to a state actually here that is doing something in that kind of related vein here.
Sure.
They're clearly aware of the truck parking problem in New Mexico, and they are investing in a system that they hope will address it at least.
Yeah, so, just spent time criticizing parking information systems, so let's just talk about the latest one. So the New Mexico DOT, they recently announced they're finished with their $3 million quote-unquote truck parking initiative.
Mm-hmm.
That initiative, of course, are signs along Interstate 10 that show how many parking spaces are available at the 6 rest areas along that interstate. In addition to the signs, drivers can use the state's 511 system to see how many truck parking spaces there are. And I think, if I remember right, the state DOT plans on working with app developers to get that information on various trucking apps. Which trucking apps weren't specified, so could be a crap because there are many of them there. So I would imagine some of the bigger ones would be included there. But anyway, this is part of a multi-million-dollar parking information system on the I-10 corridor in Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and California. That system provides parking info for about 550 parking spaces at 37 rest areas across all 4 states. And I did the math. That averages out to about less than 15 parking spaces per rest area. And so therein, in my opinion,
lies the problem
for sure. A poll conducted in 2020 by the I-10 Corridor Coalition found that 78% of drivers spend more than 30 minutes searching for safe parking. Part of that problem is, averaging out 15 parking spaces per rest area on that busy corridor, I'm sure those fill up quickly. And so, I think the solution here would be to expand those rest areas or find new facilities whenever available. I know it's easier said than done, but these are the type of solutions we need to be looking for.
Yeah, and again, it's nice that they're thinking about this, and it's nice that they're providing information. But as I look at the New Mexico website here, kind of touting this project, they've got a picture of a rest area 6 miles down the road that has 9 truck parking spaces open. By the time you get there,
right,
that may not be the reality. And it doesn't include how many spaces are available 36 miles down the road or 86 miles down the road. And as you know, when you're running out of hours and you're needing a place to pull over, you may not have another 30, 40 miles to go.
And if I recall correctly, I think that picture was taken during the daylight hours.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes. Yeah,
so,
good point.
Okay. And so, of course, peak parking hours is overnight, so that 6 parking spaces is probably 0 overnight.
Yes. So again, kudos for thinking about this problem. But this would be one very small step toward addressing the bigger problem here, and hopefully they'll get feedback on this and maybe make adjustments as we go. So working together is the key and the goal here. We'll see how that works out in New Mexico. Let's move to Philadelphia now, where we've been talking a lot about cargo thefts there. There was one in the headlines recently. This was a big one. Some $20,000 in frozen meat was stolen. But instead of asking, where's the beef, you're asking a different question, Tyson. Where was the truck parking?
Exactly. So, recently Ryan Wachowski, our Landline staff writer, he wrote a story about, as you mentioned, cargo theft. And, usually we just leave it at that. So, someone stole some cargo. It's a bummer, and here's what happened there. But as you pointed out, I had some questions there because, Ryan was able to get a hold of the police report. And the police report said that 2 trucks had their cargo stolen at about 1 o'clock on a Monday morning. And the truckers were asleep and parked on the side of the road while waiting for the facility to open for a 6 a.m. delivery. And that's when, our managing editor, Jamie Jones, kind of pointed that out. So it's find out more about this. Why were they parked there? And that was the question. Actually, there was a lot of questions here related to truck parking. So the first one is, why aren't the truckers allowed to park at the facility while waiting to be unloaded? That was one question I had. So according to the facility's website, the warehouse operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and includes a secured and enclosed trailer yard. So there are people there during 1 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, whenever. So why weren't they allowed there? Don't have the answers to that. I've reached out to the facility, and I have not heard back from them. So some speculation, but some questions that would apply to any facility. But anyway, if for whatever reason truckers can't park at the facility, the other question is, what's the truck parking situation in that area? Are there any rest areas or truck stops within a reasonable distance of the facility?
Yeah, and it's a big city. That's a tough thing to accomplish in a lot of cases.
And to that, if so, was parking at capacity when those truckers stopped for the night.
Yeah.
Now, I admit that there's the possibility here that these two drivers had options, and they chose to park on the side of the street that was pretty much right next to the facility. In which case, that's kind of on them. But either way, I think. Regardless of the details of the incident, I think it does highlight a very important fact when it comes to the truck parking problem, which is the truckers need safe and secure parking locations. The truck parking crisis, it gained national attention because a trucker, Jason Rivenberg, was shot and killed while parked at an unsafe location. And he had to park there because the facility he was delivering to was not open to receive deliveries. A very similar situation. So, that leads to another truck parking issue, which is shippers and receivers. In my opinion, I think shippers and receivers should be obligated to provide truck parking whenever possible.
Sure.
It's not always possible but when it is, that needs to be done. Because when you think about it, not allowing truckers to park while waiting to be unloaded, it's a liability. It's a product liability, as we saw with this cargo theft and many other cargo thefts in similar cases. But even worse than that is a human life liability, as we've seen with, with Jason's Law and whatnot. So when things go bad, it can go really bad. And so I think there's some obligation with shippers and receivers to provide truck parking. And so I'm trying to dig into this a little more to find out what the facts are. But again, regardless of what the facts are, this is a situation that truckers see themselves all the time, which is waiting at a facility that they can't get into and then therefore have to force to park someplace that's not very ideal. And what happens is cargo theft.
Well, and it's kind of a no-win situation, too, because I understand from the shippers and receivers, from their perspective, why it would be difficult to, in an urban center like Philadelphia, to provide, safe truck parking overnight while, people are trying to wait for things to open up. But again, this is kind of a no-win situation, and I'm not sure what the answer is, and I'm not sure you are either, but it is something worth thinking about for sure, especially when we're seeing cargo thefts, and as you point out, the human element of this as well. Certainly a danger there. Real quick here, Tyson, we've got just about a minute left. We do have, we talk about private enterprise all the time, new Travel Centers of America and Love's travel stops that have opened up recently.
Yeah, so starting out 2024, Travel Centers of America's got 2 new locations. There's a new TA Express in Blaine, Washington. That's off Interstate 5, exit 275. That's 30 truck parking spaces. There's also a new TA Express in Littlefield, Arizona. That's off Interstate 15, exit 18. That's 210.
That's a big one.
That's a nice one, yes.
Yeah.
And then Love's first new location of 2024 is located in Cortez, Colorado. That's off U.S. Highway 491, exit Road G. That's the southwestern part of the state. And that includes 29 truck parking spaces. And so, again, Love's has made an announcement that they're going to have 20 to 25 new truck parking or new truck stops this year. So there's much more to come from Love's.
Much more to come. As we said earlier, to kind of wrap this up here, it's going to take a team effort. It's going to take private enterprise. It's going to take the federal government, state governments, everybody in between to address this problem and reap the benefits as a result, because it is going to benefit everybody if we continue down this line and get more truck parking in place. Tyson, you live in the parking zone. You'll continue living in the parking zone.
Indeed.
And you'll continue giving us updates from the parking zone. So we appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Our thanks to Tyson Fisher of Landline Magazine. You can get all the latest updates and news on the truck parking situation nationwide on landline.media and in every issue of Landline Magazine. And now a break, but don't touch that dial if you have one. There's more Landline Now right after this.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
Dispatch, I picked up that load of steel, so I'm ready to roll.
Sounds good. Remember, we're getting paid by weight, so make sure to use a CAT scale.
I wouldn't weigh anywhere else.
Forget misaccuracy when you're truck on a CAT scale.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now, welcome back. There are a number of critical questions you need to answer in order to run a successful trucking business. Among the most important of those questions are, where's the freight going to be, and how much is it going to pay? Today, Landline Now senior correspondent Ashley Blackford will bring us answers to both of those important questions with a look at this week's freight markets with the folks from DAT. Here's Ashley now with the report.
Thanks, Mark, and hello once again to Robert Rouse with DAT. How are you doing today, Robert?
I'm doing great, Ashley. Thanks for asking.
Let's start off by talking about last week. How did the spot market perform?
Yeah, spot market is still pretty soft. Nationally, we saw the number of loads decrease by about 16%, all the way down to 952,000 loads on the DAT load board. Conventional logic would have been that load volumes would see a bump last week due to the Super Bowl and Valentine's Day events. Unfortunately, we've only seen those impact a couple of markets across the country and not move the national load volume in any significant way. So that's kind of what we're seeing as we roll on in January. The number of trucks on the DAT load board actually increased, though, searching for those loads, up to 309,000 trucks last week, which is still a pretty strong truck market out there. When we look at the overall strength of the spot market last week, we saw load-to-truck ratios decrease for all three equipment types. So far, we've not seen any indicator of load volume strengthening as we're coming into Q1. If we look at dry van freight specifically, the national spot market load post volumes decreased last week to levels seen in 2019 and early 2020 and the lowest in the last 8 years, with the exception of 2017. Being a little lower. Load post volumes dropped by about 20% week over week, while carrier equipment posts were mostly flat, and that resulted in last week's dry van load to truck ratio decreasing by about 18% to 2.14. And then lastly, for rates, last week we saw the national benchmark broker to carrier spot rates without fuel decrease for vans, reefers, and only staying flat for flatbeds. Rates cooled off this week after the Arctic blast 2 weeks ago. Flatbed is holding, though, and tracking much more like rates did in 2018, which was a pretty good year for flatbedders despite the lowest load-to-truck ratio in 8 years last week. The produce season unofficially started in Florida around now, and the rates rising and a shortage of trucks reported by the USDA out in Florida. Strawberry volumes in Lakeland, Florida are double what they were about a year ago, but are insufficient to move the national rate needle. So that's something for us to watch for. We probably won't see the national rate needle most likely move until around April. That's when the Vidalia onion pack data is announced, and that's when we might see some pretty big changes in the rates.
What events should owner-operators know more about this week?
Well, some people are doing the math on whether Taylor Swift can make it to the Super Bowl this year. I think carriers are going to be much more excited about the increased demand to move produce and other food products for the big game. The one that I think is most interesting is avocados. Avocados from Mexico wants to make a huge touchdown for Sunday, February 11th, 2024. The Super Bowl is the biggest occasion of the year for avocados from Mexico, with the peak shipping season coinciding with the NFL end-of-season event in Las Vegas, Nevada this year. Over the course of a year, U.S. truckload carriers will move around 95,000 truckloads of avocado, with 97% crossing the southern border in Texas. So the commercial crossing zones in Laredo accounts for 55% of all those moves, followed by 42% from far Texas. According to the USDA, import volumes of avocados are tracking around 8% higher than the last year. As this is typical in the case when the new Super Bowl is held in the West, truckload volumes from Mexico tend to shift westward, crossing into the U.S. in Nogales, Arizona, in the Tucson market, and a day drive by truck to Las Vegas. According to Avocados from Mexico, the brand has almost doubled the volume of Mexican avocados imported to the U.S. in 7 years to meet the growing demand. Today, 8 in 10 avocados in the U.S. come from Mexico, with a new record of almost 2.5 billion pounds of Mexican avocados imported to the U.S. in 2023. That's the equivalent of almost 60,000 refrigerated truckloads.
Now, Valentine's Day is coming up. How is that impacting the market?
Yeah, Valentine's Day each year is definitely a huge event for the entire shipping community. One of the things that every year I get lots of comments about is there's some reasons to go to Florida for picking up freight, but usually we don't see truck drivers really wanting to go down to the southern part of Florida, down in Miami. But that actually, this time of year, right before Valentine's Day, that's one of the best times to get loads out of southern Florida. That's where all of our flowers are actually coming from from the South America countries, all come through Miami. Miami has a huge infrastructure that can handle all of those flower volumes coming through. When we look at that, it increases the amount of truckloads significantly, mostly for reefer trucks because they have to move around the country. They're very on-demand product, has to be moved pretty quickly, and has to be moved in a cold storage facility. So it has to be kept temperature sensitive. A lot of those will come out of Miami and then go across the country by truck. Some of those flowers will be moved by airplane all the way over to Europe, redistributed there, or over to the West Coast by plane, and then moved by truck from there as well. But that's a huge impact for the Southern Florida market each year. We usually see a pretty significant increase in load volumes coming out of South Florida each year at this time. Right now, when we look at our 8-day forecast for Miami, it's actually trending towards the positive side. So we expect for the Miami market, specifically for reefers, to get hot all through the rest of the week and into the next week, leading up to Valentine's Day.
What tips do you have for owner-operators this week?
One of the most important things that you can do for your health is to ensure that you are getting enough sleep. For myself, I was struggling with health a little bit and was feeling no matter how much working out or healthy eating was actually helping. One day I was talking to a trainer in passing, and he mentioned that my issue is probably a lack of sufficient sleep. The key is really how much sleep is enough. The first thing experts will tell you about sleep is that there's really no magic number. Some people will say 10 hours, 8 hours, whatever it is. Not only do different age groups need different amounts of sleep, but the sleep needs are also individual. Like any other characteristics you are born with, the amount of sleep you need to function best may vary and be different for you than someone of the same age and gender. While you may be at your absolute best sleeping 7 hours a night, someone else might need 9 hours to have a happy and productive life. So how do you measure how much sleep you truly need? If you have trouble staying alert during boring or monotonous situations when fatigued is often unmasked, you probably aren't getting enough good quality sleep. Other signs are a tendency to be unreasonable, irritable with coworkers, family, friends, and difficult concentrating or remembering facts. For truckers, it could be as simple as forgetting the last exit. While we're having other tips this week on the DAT blog about sleep, one that has really helped me in utilizing a smartwatch to help track my sleep rhythms. There's a ton of free apps that can help tell you how many hours of REM sleep you are actually getting. And you may find that you're getting the hours, but not quality sleep, which is super important for you to stay awake and alert.
If our listeners want more information, where can they go for that?
Yeah, absolutely. You can get the latest rate information at dat.com/trendlines or look for the weekly market updates on the DAT blog. They're published every Wednesday. Also, check out and subscribe to the DAT IQ channel on YouTube, where analytics and forecasting teams take a deep dive into the freight markets each week.
All right, Robert, thank you so much.
Thanks, Ashley.
That was Robert Rouse with DAT. Mark, back to you.
Thanks, Ashley. That's our program for today. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Mark Rettig, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife,
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
Chrome.
And I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us!
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.